listening to the Recovered Life Show.
So the second segment, Damon, is an article that I sent you, which is, I thought, very interesting. Our Friday show put a little bug in my bonnet, and I wanted to find out a little more about video game addiction. And there were so many articles, let me tell you, in case people are interested.
There's a lot of articles about it because I think people are suffering. But, I got to throw this out before you begin with this.
Okay.
The reason I mentioned this on Friday on TGIF Sober was that, I have seen a lot of people, we were talking about stigma, just to set it up with alcoholism and drug addiction, codependency. It's like, well, oh my God, just get over it. It's like, oh, or something's wrong with you if you have an addiction problem. And we were talking about, just to set this up, they've pretty much come out to say 12 in 100 people, 12% of the population identifies as either recovering or recovered, right, from an addiction issue, that they've struggled with an addiction issue. Now, this is a large amount of people, but there still is this huge stigma to this. And where I've seen this breakthrough, Kristina, is people who were very uptight about this and say, well, it's a willpower issue.
Right.
See their kids get addicted to Fortnite and games and sugar, are both of those together, and their eyes start to awaken. It's like something's going on here more than them just waking up in the middle of the night to play video games.
So true. And I think that COVID exacerbated it, like alcoholism. We saw the numbers rise. We realized people needed to get into recovery. They started doing it. There's a huge online presence about recovery and realizing that we're using something to the detriment of ourselves. And the World Health Organization recognized, and it's called Internet gaming disorder in 2019. So that was pre-COVID. And I think that we knew a little bit, but we kind of thought it was those, people that struggle and are antisocial. And what they have seen is that it is rising rapidly in adolescents and children. And the actual function of gaming disorder is something that I wasn't exactly clear on until I read this article. So the article shares about what it actually does to our brain. Like, we can see on the outside, why are they spending so much time? I don't understand it. Some of the things that you should look for in your children is whether they're having intense urges for screen time, they're spending money on video games, are they cutting back on their social or recreational because they have a preference to play the video game? Are they continuing to participate in it, even if it's causing problems in their life? Are they displaying signs of irritability, anxiety, or anger when they're forced to stop playing, even if it's just for a brief moment? Are they starting to lie to people about how much they're playing? Are they needing more screen time and more screen time as they continue to play? And are they neglecting their appearances? And I thought, right? There's something for each parent to look at. And if you are an adolescent or have heard this about yourself, because we know that addictions switch. So sometimes you can get let go of alcohol and it'll show up, or sometimes you'll let go of a drug.
Having family members that have suffered from this and friends that have suffered from this is a real thing.
It is.
And I have to tell you, and I've seen this, I think this is also a trend with guys in their 20s. I've seen guys like 25, 26, 27, 28, even to early 30s that, they've got a beautiful girlfriend. They've got all this stuff going on, and they're spending their 24 hours a day playing video games. And I'm just like, come on already. Like, it's like, enough. Like, you got to let this go. This is not good. And I see this in recovery too. Like, right. They seemingly, that's something that we're talking about, surrender. They just cannot let go of that. And it's obsessive, and it's just addicted to the screen. They're always playing video games, always plugged in, and they can't seem to really let go of it, even though it's not benefiting their lives.
Right. It's detrimental to their lives. I've been the girlfriend that has been left behind because somebody needed to play a game. And so
Yes.
it's very hard to understand. It's very similar to gambling addiction. And what it does in the brain is really, really interesting. So you know how if you watch a sad movie or a happy movie,
Mhm.
you cry or you laugh. And that's because your brain actually believes that those events are happening to you. You can see yourself in that same position. That's why we cry when something happens that is a sad movie, even though it could be about strangers across the world. Well, the same thing is happening with gaming, and it's called hyperarousal, right? Your brain has hyperarousal. And guess what it drives? It's our good old friend dopamine. And
Oh, yeah.
dopamine is important, but just like how when you drink alcohol and dopamine, your brain realizes this is the quickest way for me to get dopamine and you become addicted to alcohol, so does gaming. All right. It's the
Mm.
same thing. You're in hyperarousal, which affects you physiologically, and you continue to need more and more. And the more you play, the more dopamine you get.
Well, I
So
think, yeah,
go
and
ahead.
just to interject here real quick, I want to let everybody know that this is an article from Mayo Clinic Health Systems too. It didn't have an author on it. I think it was just actually put out from them. So this is a clinical study, correct? This is like
Yes.
not just our opinion or the writer's opinion about this.
Exactly. They can actually see the brain function. And there are more and more studies that are coming out to show how dangerous it is. Now, we kind of giggle, but I think people are starting to realize that we are addicted to our phones. And so the gaming is just one step further with the hyper arousal. And it is impossible to tell your brain, without true rehabilitation, without true attention to it for a child to kind of regulate themselves, or an
Yeah.
adolescent, or if you're in early recovery. And there's something to be said about harm reduction. Obviously, playing a video game is going to be less dangerous than, participating in a drug, but it is a drug in its own self. It really is.
Well, you know what? Again, harm reduction, we talk about this. Do I want to tackle getting sober, screen addiction, nutrition, exercise, and codependency all within 48 hours? No.
No,
I think that that's a bad idea. And I think as a coach and interventionist, Christina, I think you would say, like, do not do that. Like, take the thing that's killing you the most,
the first. Yeah.
tackle that, right? And then go. And what's interesting, because what we find about I would think that I would have nothing in common with people too, because I played video games. I'm
Hmm.
not going to say I dislike them, but I don't necessarily, it's not my go-to entertainment thing, right? And
Right.
I think everything, it's like gambling. Like, I'm somebody who can gamble. I'm not an addictive gambler. Like, I'm somebody who can do it for entertainment, to say, oh, here's $100. I'm going to spend $100, and I'll play a couple of slot machines or whatever, and I walk away. It's like, okay, it was like I spent $100 or I made some. It's like I didn't make anything. It was entertainment, right? But I know people who can't do that. They can't place one bet, right? Because one bet will turn into a million bets. So I
Yes.
think I understand it. I understand it. I think there's so much going on with the screen, so it's not just video games. And I found myself, I'm going to be honest, a little judgmental about this. But
Really.
then I realized the other night, yeah, I was because I'm like, oh my God, come on. Like, just because I had a
Hmm.
family member, it was like, all right, man, like it's like, it's time. You're old enough now. It's like, let go of the video games, go out and
Right.
do a life, right?
Right.
But I found myself the other day at my old school meeting, picking up my phone and going through things upset. And I was like, wait, why am I doing this? I have more than enough things going on right here.
Right.
Why am I doing this? It's like, I am addicted to my screen. So I've started to kind of try to just leave my phone behind a
True.
lot. And I feel uncomfortable about it. I feel,
Yes.
honestly, I'm like, wait, I can't do that.
That's one of the strategies to what they're sharing with parents that are starting to notice that your adolescent may be going down that road, is to have some serious guidelines, some locks on the phone to actually help somebody and assist them moving away from it. There are some medications that they're treating gaming addiction with, where it helps the brain to shut off and not get the same dopamine hit that it was getting. But if you start to notice it, You start locking the phone, you start moving it out, you start increasing the discussion around it, and you model the behavior. And I've seen this with parents, that don't want their children on the screens, but they're on the screens just as much. And it's really has to be a community effort. And there is a lot of judgment around it. You're right. I see memes all the time. We're the last generation. I'm a Gen X. I know you're a Gen X. We're the last generation that played outside, as if we have some.
True, though.
It is true, but we didn't have the access to that we have nowadays. So it's certainly something for us to think about as parents, and something that if you realize that it is moving you toward that direction, that you need to start putting in some safety parameters around it.
Well, it's interesting. It's like you don't realize what you've lost with all the screen addiction until you're in a situation where you have to put down your phone. I remember several years ago, I was, I ride horses a lot. I love horses. And I was out on a ride in a ranch close to Los Angeles. And there was a bunch of like preteens, and they were all running around and playing on this ranch.
Right.
Half of them lived on this ranch. And I was like, something's really odd here, because having a preteen at home at that time, right? Like I realized it's like, they're all plugged in, in the city, they're all plugged in. And these kids were free. They were running around. They didn't have a screen. They weren't checking in. They were doing things, taking risks, having fun, right? Like you realize how much you've lost when you've had to put it down. But it is shocking, the uncomfortableness that you experience when you leave your phone. It's almost like leaving your shirt or pants at home. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
But the cost to the adolescent and to ourselves not to be able to walk through that is greater. Yeah. And I think that's the really important thing. We don't get the ability to emotionally deal with things. Frustration comes quicker. It is not actually helping us. I was speaking with a client over the weekend, and I'm going to shut this just for a minute. I was speaking to a client over the weekend and discussing this. And I said, you think that that game that you're doing is helping you relax, but it processes so much faster than your brain that it's actually creating anxiety. It is actually making it difficult for you to manage your life. And we had a serious conversation about it. And I understood, as this person was looking at me, why it felt so bad to let go of the phone. But once you start putting down your phone, social media, all of the things that come back to us, but it's an actual brain function. To have your brain in hyper arousal all the time is not healthy, and it doesn't allow you to manage your life.
COVID made it worse, because now
we're
all plugged in. And I got to tell you, like working from home, like if you have to work from home, like I was somebody who did not work at home for a long period of time. Then COVID came and the office shut down. I had to work at home. Right. So the thing is that now everything is blurry. But I found myself this weekend where I took a nap. My tablet and my phone is sitting right next to me. I have to have this technology around me all the time. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to put this in the other room. I'm working on my garden or doing things that I enjoy. And I've got my phone. I keep looking at my phone. This is stupid. This is not a life. This is a faux life. Right.
Right.
And what does this suggest? What does the Mayo Clinic and this thing suggest about how to move away from being, if you find yourself getting sucked in to this?
Well, it suggests not sleeping with your phone in the room, making it a habit of it being away from it, really seriously talking to a professional, getting a coach, start having these discussions, recognize that it's robbing you of your life, and start having an accountability partner who will say, okay, we're done. And there are programs where you can lock your phone and not allow yourself to surf the internet. So there are ways for us to be able to do this, and it'll be painful at first. But also, there are recovery programs and rehabilitation centers that are spending the money on the research to start to figure out how to make this better. We have 12-step groups that are around gambling. They're very similar to gaming. And so if you find yourself in serious trouble, it's time to ask for help.
And I think teens too, I think parents need to recognize when people when kids are having temper tantrums because they've played for 8 hours
Yes.
and they don't want to write, and you're like, no, like you got to take a break, and they're having to, like, I've seen this, right? And so I think we need to, like, I think as parents and as, aunts and uncles and just being part of a community, I think we need to identify that this is potentially a problem, because that dopamine hit, if that video game's not there, they're going to seek it out when they find drugs and alcohol. That's going to
Yes.
become very familiar, soothing for them.
Yes,
to
it
say,
is.
like, hey, you know what? I might not be able to play video games in college 24/7, but I can drink at night, or I could do this, right? Like, so I think that that's the next, it's almost the starter drug.
It really
drugs
is.
and alcohol.
It really is. And we know that a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, a 15-year-old still has another 10 years for their cognitive function to be completed. And we know this in alcoholism and drug addiction. The earlier you start, the less you are able to actually move through those lessons and develop your brain and your prefrontal cortex. And so we all get to kind of grow up once we get sober and really start having these feelings. So it is up to us to pre-plan and make a decision of how much time will that screen time be allowed for this child. And I think that it's a conversation that all of us, as even adults, have to start figuring out, how do I put down the phone?
Well, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, guys. We're going to put a link in the show notes here to this Mayo Clinic Health Systems article. It's definitely a good read. Thank you so much, Kristina.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.